Pulschain is set to be the largest airdrop in crypto history. Today, we're going to cover the total supply, a potential price at the opening, and everything you need to know about the recent updates regarding Pulschain. So let's dive right in. First of all, we're just going to do a quick reminder on what Pulschain is and kind of what the value prop is, and then we'll go into the details about what you need to know for the snapshot, the announcement, the supply, all that good stuff. So hopping in here, first of all, as a reminder, Pulschain is going to be a fork of Ethereum. So what that means is that essentially they are taking the Ethereum code, basically reiterating on that, and then making it better. So some of the value props that Richard Hart has talked about, he's the CEO and founder of Pulschain. He's talked about 4x throughput, the possibility to move it to proof of stake, and then also a deflationary mechanism to add to Pulschain where the supply would actually shrink over time as opposed to rising over time. And you've also probably heard the word PulseX along with Pulschain. Now, this is a part of Pulschain, but specifically, it's going to be a fork of Uniswap. Uniswap is the most popular DEX on Ethereum currently, and so PulseX is supposed to serve as the main DEX of the Pulschain ecosystem. So now that we've kind of reset on that, let's look into a little bit about the current supply, what this deflationary mechanism is going to be, and maybe potential price here at the launch. So first of all, looking at supply, this has kind of been, a question that's been mulled over and over again over the last few months, but it's looking like it's going to be 10,000 times higher than ETH supply, but the PLS supply increases with the amount sacrificed, but up until the point of the total supply reaching 10,000x higher than Ethereum. So if it's not at that point, they are going to get upscaled, it says, bonus coins pro rata, to bring the total supply to 10,000x ETH's total supply. So if we look at ETH's total supply right now, we're sitting just under 120 million, just over 120 million is going to be the final supply for Ethereum. Currently, it's still inflationary. But with this supply, we'd be looking at, something well over $1 trillion in terms of total supply of PLS tokens. PLS will be the native token of Pulschain. But based on this number and based on what Richard said here on the Pulschain website, we should be expecting anywhere from 1.2 to 1.6 trillion tokens in the total supply of Pulschain. But obviously that can change, depending on the plans and depending on the announcements. But going down here, just to provide a little bit more clarity around what the deflationary mechanism is going to look like, right here they talk about it. So PLS has 0% inflation, validators only earn fees, and 25% of the fees are burnt to reduce the circulating supply. So the first day that these are out, that'll be the highest supply ever recorded for PLS, and from there, as the chain gets more usage, the tokens should be burned over time. So the other thing that I want to mention is a little bit about what they come to expect in the future. So Pulschain's native token PLS can be staked and delegated to validators that reward the delegators with the largest percentage of fees. So it's looking like this is going to be, the idea here is that over the long term, it's not going to be inflationary. There might be, upside pressure on the price. And the idea is to make this a little bit more, scale friendly than Ethereum, right? Right now, if you're using Ethereum, you know how crazy those gas fees are. And this is, part of the work to bring that down. But let's get into the good stuff and kind of just briefly talk about the recent announcements about the airdrop, what the snapshot details are, and maybe what kind of price we can expect out of the gates here for Pulschain. So first of all, just to recap, there was a 19-day long sacrifice period, and it's set to be the biggest ever airdrop to Ethereum users. So everyone that sacrificed their tokens during that 19-day sacrifice phase, resulted in over $670 million sacrificed, and those folks will get a certain amount of initial PLS tokens based on what they sacrificed. Now, if we go down here and look a little bit into what that date could mean, just recently, about a week ago or so, Richard Hart stated that the mainnet will launch in May and possibly within the next 14 days. So that would mean 14 days from the 10th, obviously the 24th. That's 4 days from now. So it's very, very possible that we see Pulschain going live next week. And so now the biggest thing for you to know if you're a potential Pulschain holder or a current Pulschain holder, you want to get the tokens out of the exchange, whatever you have, and leave them on chain ready for the snapshot. So this needs to be your priority, because only the tokens that are in user wallets will get copied to the Pulschain. So if you have these on exchanges like KuCoin, Coinbase, Trust Wallet, whatever it is, the exchange may or may not honor the airdrop. So this is a really, really important point. You don't want to have held Pulschain sacrificial tokens for, actually almost a year at this point is when they, when you could have done it. So you don't want to be holding these and not get rewarded for it, right? So make sure that these are off of the exchanges when you're going through that. Now, one of the last things I want to touch on here, now that we have kind of the recent dates and the announcements out of the way, is what could be the potential price of Pulschain, right? So I think one of the best ways to kind of, speculate on this, obviously it's anyone's best guess, right? But I kind of want to set expectations for people, right? So we need to take a couple of things into account. First of all, it's going to be a massive supply, massive supply. Anything over $1 trillion, it takes a lot for that to get moving. The burns are going to be slow in the beginning, as there are going to be less validators in the beginning, and there's going to be less volume in the beginning. So it's going to take a while for that burning mechanism to ramp up. So we need to keep that in mind. We also need to keep in mind that some folks have been waiting for this airdrop for a long time, and they're just going to cash out and take their money and run. And so if you're in it for the long term, I think we can expect somewhat of a little bit of a dip. And what I'm showing right here is the Hex chart. So Hex had a similar launch, and this is the price according to Uniswap, which is what people will be using if they want to swap out a Pulschain. So they'll be using PulseX or Uniswap. But this is really, really important to note. So here's Hex on its first day, first week of trading or so, give or take. We saw it lost 100% of its price, right? So, I wouldn't be too surprised if, PLS comes out of the gates, under a cent. I would say most likely it's going to start under a cent. We could even see it drop to half of a cent. Now, whether it stays there, that's going to depend on the validity and the use cases of the entire Pulschain blockchain. But at the same time, you have to be aware that out of the gates, people are going to want to take their money. They're going to, especially people who have been kind of sitting and waiting for this airdrop for so long, they want to get out and secure the profits. If you are interested in hopping in on this next week when it launches, just please bear in mind that the first week is most likely going to look similar to this. I would be very, very shocked if we just see, parabolic movement to the upside like this. And hey, we might see a couple daily green candles, right? There might be a lot of hype, and we might see a lot of buys outpacing those sells. But I think eventually we're going to see folks taking profits, kind of readjusting their portfolios, taking that profit out, maybe moving it elsewhere since they've been waiting so long. Or, we may see, a good amount of people ride that out. But if you're going to be the person that rides that out, you have to understand that you could be exposing yourself to heavy downside. So if you set your expectation on that, it's a lot easier to hold through that. If you're not expecting that, you expect it to go straight to the moon, it's a lot easier to hold through a period like that. So I think we need to be relatively grounded here. And I think, with the high supply, given how many people are probably incentivized to sell it, I think we're looking at, anything between a cent and a half a cent is going to be a really, really solid starting price for PLS, in my opinion. Obviously, it can really start anywhere. It's anyone's guess what this is going to start at. But if I were to, make a bet on it, I'd say anywhere between a half a cent and a cent, maybe even less, given just how high that current supply is, or what it will be, which, we're assuming, between 1.5, maybe 2 trillion, well, less than that, 1.2, 1.5 trillion. So it really, really depends on what we end up with this final supply, and then how much this gets used out of the gates, right? Since they're forking Ethereum, there's a solid chance that this gets a lot of volume to start, but at the same time, Pulschain still needs to get a lot of this volume on their own accord too, right? So people need to discover Pulschain, they need to trust it, and they need to use it. A lot of people are already using Ethereum. It's hard to take people off of that. So just something to keep in mind. So just to review, we have the Pulschain PLS token, as well as Pulschain and PulseX likely launching middle of next week, by the end of May at the very latest, it seems like, based on the recent announcements. And I think, again, we need to be careful with the opening week because Hex saw that opening on Uniswap drop 100%, give or take. And so I think out of the gates, given that in mind, with the supply, I think we see, something under a cent, maybe even half a cent to start. But I'm excited for the drop. Let me know in the comments if this is a project that you're a part of, and let me know what other ones you want me to cover. Hopefully this is helpful, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.